I got a question. The question is this: if we are supposed to abide in non-doership, then why is there so much decision making? Again, the question is, if we are meant to abide in non-doership, then why is there so much decision making? It's a good question, and so let's look into this, because it's a practical question that perhaps many are facing. So we can look into this question and see what it reveals. So the first thing is, when we say if we are meant to abide in non-doership, that very statement is worth looking into. Is non-doership something we are meant to abide in, or we are simply meant to recognize as something that already is? Because they are two vastly different things. If non-doership is a goal, then we will have to abide in it, so to speak, and we will have to practice it. We will have to put effort into it, and all these ideas come into place. And there are many who talk like that, but the main thing to realize is, if anything is gained by effort, it will go when the effort goes away. This we see in this world too. If we stop practicing a particular art, we don't anymore remain that good at it. So practicing and putting effort and gaining something is never going to be permanent. It's only going to be temporary. So we may practice and convince ourselves through affirmation or through reading of this idea of non-doership, and that will first of all go away when some other thought comes and takes over. Instead, if we are only to recognize it, so if there is something that's already the case and I have just been ignorant of it, and all that the pointer of self-inquiry is inviting us to do is to recognize that which exists as the truth already, then in that case, this is not about gaining something new, but simply recognizing what is already the truth. It is much like the traditional example given is, you're wearing a necklace, or in a more modern sense, let's say which many people I'm sure can relate to, you're wearing glasses, eyeglasses, and then you're searching for it because you forgot that you're already wearing it. And then you just have to simply recognize that you're already wearing it. Either someone points to you, or you yourself realize that I'm already wearing it. So you didn't gain any new glasses. It was already there. You simply recognized it. In that case, the glass is not going to go away the moment you stop recognizing it, let's say. It's always there. But if you don't recognize it, you're going to be looking for it ignorantly. And that's what we are doing here. Non-doership is not something to be gained and to be abiding in. It is simply to be recognized as the ever-present reality. So if we look into it carefully, if we look at every action, every doing, which is where non-doership comes from, all doing stems from thinking, because no deed comes without a thought preceding it, and all thought comes from all kinds of inputs over which we have no control. How a thought rises, why it rises, what is the source of it, is impossible to figure out. A thought comes due to a complex set of genetic, environmental, and other inputs, every single thought, and through that every single action happens. So if we simply recognize that every thought and therefore every action arises out of a field of memory and environment and genetics, all of which is programmed in its own way, and therefore every deed which stems out of thought is happening on its own. And when we recognize this, then that recognition simply makes us see that we don't have to own anything as my doing or my thinking. It is simply happening. Now the next part of the question is, why is there so much decision making? Now if the first part is clear, then the second part is fairly clear, I suppose, because all decisions are nothing but different forms of thought, and all decisions which are thoughts happen on their own again. Of course, the brain is being used, the memory is being used, the environment in which the decision is getting made is being used, but the question is there an I in this process? There is no I, because all of this are functioning on their own, and therefore it seems that I am making the decision, and that's the fundamental ignorance that makes us feel that I own the decision, and therefore there is guilt or pride or various emotions associated with it. Instead, if we simply recognize that decisions are made on their own by all kinds of inputs, and one has to therefore use the inputs diligently. It is not to shirk away and be very casual about it, because every decision has its own consequence. So in the time in which a decision is to be made, all the faculties are to be employed to their best possible extent. The memory, the intellect, the environment, the inputs of others, listening to people, all of this is part of a decision, and it is to be made very clearly. And yet there is no individual I in this process. The memory is not I, the genetics is not I, the environment is not I. So if you look at it in any way, there is no individual who makes the decision. A collection of inputs makes the decision, and when this is clear, then the collection of inputs owns the decision in its own way. There is no I to feel proud about it, to feel guilty about it, or all that. So that recognition is non-doership, and therefore it is not something to abide in as much as we said, to recognize the already existing truth of non-doership. And when we do that, then simply decisions get made just as every thought happens. There is not a moment when some activity doesn't happen. Just as breathing happens, just as talking happens, decisions happen small and big. Sometimes we don't pay attention whether to take this road or that road, and sometimes there are huge decisions. All of these decisions get made, and of course, depending on the seriousness of the decision, more time and energy may have to be spent. All that is fine. One can take all the diligence necessary to make the decision, yet not having the illusion that there is an I doing this decision making. And as long as we are clear of that, then there is no conflict between non-doership and decision making. So the key again is not to look at non-doership as something like a goal to abide in or a state to attain, but simply a recognition of the nature of reality as it is right now, whether we recognize or not. And not recognizing it creates misery, because we think we make the decisions, we do the actions, and therefore we feel guilty or proud or anxious or worried or all the rest. But if we simply realize that decisions get made on their own, And when I say on their own, it doesn't mean it happens in some magical way. The intellect is used, the memory is used, the environment is used, but all of that happens perfectly when there is no false notion of an I that is overlaid on top of it. And once that is clear, then decisions are made, and once the decisions are made, the consequences are also handled perfectly as needed.